Johnny Mac, football at 4. We'll start off. Let's take a look at tonight's game, Seattle and San Francisco. I like San Francisco to not only win, but I like them to cover.
Well, I picked Seattle to go to the Super Bowl before the season started, so I'm not going to say they're completely a fraud.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, Russell has played at an MVP level. But, I see this all over the league with every team. The Patriots didn't play anybody. They lose to Baltimore. Baltimore lost to Cleveland. Who had Atlanta just beaten down New Orleans yesterday? I mean, that's what this league is, with the exception of a very few teams. Anybody can beat you at any time. So anytime you get out and you're 7-2 and you have an MVP quarterback, I think you're relevant. I'll put it that way. No guarantee they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I think it's a good football team. It's been a good football team for a long time. And I think there's something to that as well. Teams that are used to playing in January, I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah, now, the one thing with Seattle is, too, you're right. They got a quarterback playing at that level. And if he plays – the problem for me is he has to play at that level every game for them almost. Otherwise, they're just not good enough.
Well, again, I mean, he is playing at that level. I think he's 22-1 touchdowns, interceptions. So I don't think that's going to fall off a cliff. He's just not that type of player. We got a pretty large sample size. Anybody can have a bad game on a particular Sunday. And look, I expect them to lose again. I'm not saying they're going to win out or anything of that nature, but I think they're in the conversation with any team in the NFC, including the 49ers.
Yeah, that game's tonight. We have it on 97.3 ESPN. Before we get to some Eagles news today, because there is some Eagles news today, including Brandon Brooks. We'll get to that in just a second. What do we know now? Both teams 5-4. Down the stretch they come with that Vikings win last night over the Cowboys. How do we feel everything sets up down the stretch?
Well, it sets up perfectly on paper. I mean, this was your hope, and I didn't have a lot of hope from the Eagles' perspective going into that game last night. I didn't think they were going to get much help. You see, Minnesota's typically bad on the road against good teams. And certainly in night games throughout the Mike Zimmer era, and they managed to win the football game. So I think that's a pleasant surprise from a Philadelphia perspective. And then you just look at the schedules, and one is easy and one is difficult, and the Eagles don't have the difficult one, except for the next 2 weeks. But even those games and all the tough games remaining, including the Dallas game in Week 16, they're all at Lincoln Financial Field. And then you got 2 games against the Giants, who are a dumpster fire. You can't even create an adjective for what the Redskins are. And although the Dolphins are playing hard for Brian Flores, and you got to give him credit for almost rising up against the organizational mandate of lose on purpose, that's a game you have to win. So if you just take care of business, this is shaping up very well for the Eagles. But that Week 16 game will essentially be the NFC East Championship game. I think that's how it's going to shake out.
All right, Johnny Mac, let's look a little bit at the Eagles news today, where they re-sign or extend or rework, I guess you could say, Brandon Brooks, 4-year extension. He's the highest paid guard now in the NFL. Which is a story in itself, coming off an Achilles tear, that he was even able to start the season and then play as well as he have. But give us the Howie Roseman reason of why Brooks got this deal now.
Well, I mean, these deals only go up, number one, and that's what Howie's always been very good at and understands. So even though you're the highest paid guard today, you're just holding that for the next big time guy whose contract is up and looking for an extension. And what you have is what has arguably been the best offensive lineman in the NFL through 9 games, not just guard, but also tackle, also center. And it is an amazing story. That part of it is that he's been able to have this career year coming off an Achilles. And remember, he's a 350-pound guy. He tore his Achilles in January. And he was back for week 1, and he's played at this level throughout the season. It's an amazing story, and I've been saying for years, it's been years since you could say the best pure football player on the Philadelphia Eagles has been Fletcher Cox. It's not this year. It's Brandon Brooks, and it's an amazing story.
Yeah, I saw some praise that came out earlier today, John, and I thought they were talking about Brooks for a second, but it was wide receiver coach Carson Walsh, and he said this: at the end of the day, when Mac Hollins grades out for us, he's one of our top graders every week. He aligns right, he assigns right, and he plays with great effort. We believe when the ball comes his way, he's going to make the play for us. What the heck is he smoking?
Well, remember, coaches think differently than fans, and they grade differently. And remember, they understand a player's responsibility on a particular play. And more often than not, Mac Hollins' responsibility isn't to catch the football. I mean, Doug Peterson has admitted on the record he's the sixth or seventh option in that offense. So the things he is asked to do, that just means he grades out at a high level. So whether it's blocking, whether it's, as you said, lining up correctly, which is underrated. You see so many pre-snap penalties where guys aren't lined up correctly.
Well, that's really only Aguilar.
Well, you see it all over the league. And Aguilar has done it in the past, and it's happened to the Eagles. It happens to every team. I mean, that's just what it is. So, and then the second part is, what do you expect him to say? He's not going to throw the guy under the bus. But, I mean, there's a reason you're going to the Jordan Matthews well for the third time. And it's not because Mac Hollins is an impactful receiver.
Right.
It's
not because he's lining up correctly.
Exactly. I always say, don't listen to what an organization says. Look at what they do.
Right.
And, there are some off-the-record things and things like that. But on the record, I mean, there's not a coach in the NFL. I shouldn't say that. There are a couple grumpy guys who will throw somebody under the bus at times, Adam Gase being notable. But very, very rarely. And certainly not going to throw a guy who does work as hard as Mac Hollins and does some of the dirty work. They're not going to throw him under the bus.
No, they're not. And that's something the Eagles do well. But they defend their guys, and they're going to stay on record and stay positive. But
do you anticipate with Matthews here that Hollins is still a part of the offense? In other words, can he say what he says today, knowing that Hollins is essentially out of the offense?
Yes, he can, because he doesn't have to talk to us for another month. The assistant coaches only have to talk once a month. So, yeah, I mean, everybody knows he's not. The real question is it going to be Jordan Matthews or J.J. Arcega-Whiteside coming out of the bye? Who's going to get more playing time? And it looks like it's going to be Jordan Matthews, at least from the way Jordan was talking today. So that's the bigger question. I mean, they need more production from that position. I think when you have a starting receiver who plays as many snaps as Mac Hollins, you can spin it as positively as you want. But as I've said consistently, point me to another receiver in the NFL anywhere who plays that many snaps and hasn't caught a ball since September.
Hard to find.
Very hard.
So what role do you anticipate these receivers will have now? What is the the alignment when they get out there with a three-receiver set?
Well, it's going to be Jeffrey Aguilar and Jordan, I think, for the most part. And then the other guys will mix in from there. Somebody needs a blow.
But, I mean, do you anticipate Matthews being the slot guy and Nelson moves back to the outside?
Nelson will be the slot receiver. They kind of know. So either or, you have somebody playing out of position, at least from their natural position. But Jordan kind of proved last year. That's what happened last year. He proved he can handle it a little bit better, and actually made some big plays, including in the playoffs against New Orleans. So I think all they're looking for is a little competence, and if they want more from Nelson Aguilar, the last thing, and obviously they do want more, the last thing you want to do is put him outside even more because he just can't do it. We've seen it. This is year 5. The sample size is large enough. So now that you have another option, I would imagine they would use that other option.
So something we've seen over the past couple of years, John, is the Eagles going on a run and getting into the playoffs or locking up home field advantage. In 2017, I think they won 5 of 6 to finish the year in order to lock up that, that seed. And then last year they won 4 of 5. I may be mixing up 4 and 5 and 5 and 6, but they went on, runs there to end the year 2 straight years. And now it's setting up perfectly for it to potentially be a 3rd straight year. With the Cowboys loss last night, 5 and 4, deadlocked. Cowboys has the advantage head to head. Is this week everything for this team? I know if they lose, there's mathematically it's still fine, but they can really start this run right now coming off the bye.
No, I think they can afford to lose certainly 1 game, maybe even 2. If you lose 2, you absolutely can't lose to the Cowboys. But if you win 6 of 7, I think you win. You're in easily. And if you win 5, as long as you beat the Cowboys, you're probably in pretty good shape as well. So I think that's the goal, and I think the hope is to win one of these next 2 games against 2 really good opponents. Doesn't matter which one, and then run the table and pull the Aaron Rodgers. And it's not out of the realm of possibility when you look at those 5 games. There's only one game that you could argue they should lose, and that's Dallas here, because they haven't been able to beat Dallas. So I think it's legitimate to question if they could, but the game is here. And then the other 4 games, as I mentioned, Giants twice, Redskins, Dolphins. That's easy. That's if you lose one of those games, you don't deserve to go to the playoffs.
That's right. Although the Dolphins are hot right now.
Yeah, they are. And like I said, I give them credit for.
Now, does the owner come down on the coach in this situation? How does that all work out now?
No, I think anyone in Philadelphia has been an expert in tanking in a different sport, and what players and coaches don't tank. Executives do. And the players, the hope is they play as hard as they can for as long as they can, and the coach is doing his job to get them ready. So it's sort of a duality, but players and coaches don't tank, and they're not asked to tank. That's executives, as I said.
John McMullen, Football at 4. I want to go to the defense here. Jim Schwartz spoke today. You were having to force yourself to kind of defend Schwartz over the weekend on Twitter. The Eagles defense, he's, a guy that many people want out, that he doesn't know what he's doing. But seriously, though, on a serious note, the fact that he's got his secondary back, are you noticing him calling the game differently? Did he admit that, yes, getting those guys back allows me to do more things?
Yeah, no question. He trusts Jalen Mills specifically more than any other corner. I've told you guys for a long time he thinks Ronald Darby is his most talented corner, and Avonte Maddox is his best slot corner. And he got them all back week, 3 weeks in a row. Mills, Avonte Maddox. So he finally has the corners he wants on the field. And yeah, he's calling the game with a little more confidence. I think, people don't often understand. You look at Sidney Jones playing poorly. You look at Rasul Douglas, who actually played pretty well early in the season, but kind of got exposed as the season went on. Look, as a defensive coordinator, it's your job to sort of scheme around those guys who are, in Sidney's case, having a crisis of confidence, or in Rasul's case, being limited from a physical standpoint, just from a speed standpoint. You have to scheme around those weaknesses. And He thinks he has better players now. I think they are better players. I think they've proven they're better players. And, yeah, that makes a defensive coordinator feel more comfortable.
Yeah, and, of course, they're going to have their hands full this weekend with Tom Brady. Although they said that they watched the Super Bowl, and one thing that they said was that not having Gronk has really changed their offense a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you don't have a Hall of Fame tight end, it's going to change things. You don't have a Hall of Fame player anywhere. It's going to change that particular position. That's one of the best tight ends to ever play. And, oh, by the way, he still might come back. I still don't think the door is closed on that. But he's not going to play this week, so it doesn't matter to the Eagles. And, yeah, they've changed dramatically. But that's been the Patriots. That's been the brilliance of the Patriots. It's 2 decades. The only constants are Belichick and Brady. Everything else has changed multiple times. And whether you had the Randy Moss era when they had really explosion on the outside, or you had the 2 tight end era with Gronk and Aaron Hernandez until his personal life went off the rails. Last year, you saw them morph in season to being more of a run team as the weather got worse. And you saw Sony Michel gouging people in the playoffs. That's what Bill does. That's why he's better than everybody else. He morphs, and often it's not year to year. Often it's week to week.
Talk about week to week, man. You had the Dolphins beat the Colts. You had the Jets win yesterday. How about the Falcons going to the Saints?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Unbelievable.
Everybody can point to certain games. Like I said, Baltimore look like world beaters. They lost to Cleveland at home. Everybody had the Saints, and I think rightfully so, as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. They lose to the Falcons, who've been god awful. Everybody has those games in this league, and I don't know why at this point it surprises people. I mean, the word parity is always used in this league, and I do think there are more really bad teams than usual, but most teams there isn't a drastic difference in talent. So it becomes about execution and how you're playing on a particular Sunday. And I think that's why it's hard. That's why people gamble. That's why you have the silly Godfather. That's why you guys do the podcast. It ain't easy to pick these games.
But you could go through a million scenarios, and I don't know that anybody would have came up with Titans 35-32 over the Chiefs. I mean, Kansas City has
could you?
Right? I mean, just Tennessee, and they're down 10-0 in that game, and they come back to win. I mean, between that, I think if you also look at, the fact that the Rams, another team that just can't get out of its own way, they travel. Now, you're going on the road, Pittsburgh. But I mean, the Rams, what's their story? It's just been a weird season, and you're right. The parity, it shouldn't be surprising, but yet it still is.
Yeah, and I think you also have to look at it week to week. You bring up the Chiefs now; they can't stop the run. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the run. Minnesota comes in there last week. It's Dalvin Cook. They sell out to stop the run. They stop the run. They managed to win the game on a last-second field goal. They go back to this week. They don't feel there's a Dalvin Cook level player, although Derrick Henry's very good. And they go in with a different mindset, and they can't stop the run again. That's sort of what happens in this league, is you game plan each week, and sometimes who you're trying to take out of the game, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But then the secondary guys, sometimes they jump up and bite you.
By the way, Dwayne Haskins has been named the starter the rest of the year for Washington. Note there. We have Kittle. Looks like he might not play tonight for San Francisco.
Oh, there we go. Seattle.
Yeah, there we go. So now my pick's starting to get a little wobbly. Week 10 in the books. Countdown to kickoff. Get you ready for maybe what could be the best Monday Night Football game in a long time. Seattle, San Francisco tonight. The guys have it at the Landmark in Glassboro. Stop out and see the crew, Tony Bruno, John McMullen, Colin Thompson. They'll lead you right into tonight's countdown to kickoff for the Monday Night Football game. John McMullen, football at 4 in the books.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks, got John. It. And John McMullen, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk on the hotline. He'll be back with football at 4 again tomorrow on the show.